and lawyers, guns and money. Dad, get me out of this. Ha!
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Who are the lawyers for the 5 men arrested at Watergate?
Did you provide a DNA sample?
No, not as it pertains to this case.
There's a lot of badness in the world today. I see it in court every day. I've sentenced boys younger than you to the gas chamber. Didn't want to do it, felt I owed it to them.
You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order.
45% of you in our rock and roll poll yesterday call Herman Cain a no-talent ass clown. That's our rock and roll poll question yesterday. Good one about American Idol today. Go to KTRS.com or JCOntheline.com, and you'll see all that there. In the meantime, we welcome our legal eagle, Scott Sherman, to the Big 550, part of our carousel of co-hosts. He's here every Wednesday in the 1 o'clock hour, and you hear his show, Night Court, from 7 until 9 Saturday evenings. Wait a minute, JC, you're insane. That's not when it's on. Scott.
Yes, it is.
They moved the show.
Oh, my gosh.
And we moved it to night because we were getting a lot of complaints that it was in the afternoon. And just to make people not go crazy, we moved it to night.
Did that show, Night Court, have a theme song? It did, didn't it? Oh, yeah. Do you use it?
No.
You should use it.
We only ripped the name off.
Use the music. I love that music.
Reinhold Weege.
Dutch? What was that guy's name? Dutch?
Moose.
No,
Bull.
The big bull.
Bull. Yeah.
Why did I think Dutch?
I don't know. I didn't watch it. Marky Post was on that show.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Harry Anderson, one of the biggest J.O.s in the business.
Really?
Oh.
Now, he looks so much like Dana Carvey. It's scary. But I always thought he looked like the nicest guy.
Considered one of the biggest jag-in-the-bags you'll ever meet in all of show business. So that's why I didn't watch that show. I wouldn't give him the time of day. Anyhow, regardless, or as they say in Missouri, irregardless, if you want to hear Scott's show, Saturday from 7 to 9 here on the Big 550 KTRS, that's Night Court. And we'll give you a phone number to contact Scott after the show if you are interested in him doing some lawyering for you. We have 2 topics to do today. We have to sort of move quickly because I wasted too much time on silly stuff here today. But the second one we'll do in the next half hour is with regard to what could possibly be a lawsuit or two.
You think?
Filed against Carnival Cruises, the cruise industry, on the thing off the coast of Italy there. So we'll talk about that later. Let's start with the misunderstanding, or I don't know, maybe some people get it. I'm sure some people don't. I really had to look at it long and hard, and don't giggle when I say long and hard.
I almost did.
But, Wikipedia is shut down today. And as usual, all you got to do is follow the money on this story. Scott, what's going on?
That's a very good way to surmise it, because this is the battle between those that own things called intellectual property, copyrights, and the like, and those that want to disseminate those without paying for it. And so the Internet has become the repository, the place where stuff is put for us to get it for free. And a lot of it's really cool. Like Wikipedia is a great resource to get all kinds of information.
Incorrect information.
That's right.
That you can edit yourself.
Some of it's even right. And YouTube.
On occasion, yes.
And YouTube is a great
awesome.
place.
I knew that Wikipedia was full of crap when I looked up the Mets or Pond Scum, and there was no mention of my name.
Of course.
They gave like 3 or 4 different possible attributions to it, and I was like, oh, really? So I wasn't even part of the Mets or Pond Scum thing. Okay, thank you, Wikipedia.
Well, that's
that's
Internet.
because people can write it themselves, and you can go in and edit yourself on Wikipedia. Yeah. So
what's real about this is the intellectual
J.C.
property.
Clarkson was the king of England.
Right. Intellectual property is big dough. You're talking about $8 trillion worth of dough.
Do you know the first time I think people ever heard that term was when David Letterman jumped from NBC to CBS, and they would not let him use the name Larry Bud Melman.
That's right.
Which was created by David Letterman's ex-girlfriend and one of the producers on the show, Meryl Marco.
That's right.
She took Calvert DeForest. Oh, and by the way, we found out later on that his real first name is Grant. But that's a whole nother story. He passed away a couple of years ago. But anyhow, Calvert DeForest, they created this character, Larry Bud Melman. They go over to CBS and the NBC lawyers say, you can't use Larry Bud Melman. They're like, what do you mean we can't use it? Like, it's intellectual property. And then there was even a fight about the top 10 list and all sorts of stuff. And I think that was the first time I heard that term.
And I think that it's something that's going to happen more and more because people can create things on their computers, on their iPads, on their laptops that basically belongs to them. Now,
but I'm getting confused because 5 years ago we went through this with Napster and music. So what are we talking about now? Because they kind of settled that, and some artists wouldn't put their songs up and blah, blah, blah.
We're talking about the same kind of stuff because copyrights are things that are created when you make a new work of art. Now, the definition of it is real technical, but it's basically this. If you make something and it's unique, it belongs to you, and you as the copyright owner can do whatever you want with it and prevent people from doing whatever they want with it if they're trying to make money on it or not getting your permission. Now, there's some exceptions, but by and large it's this. Write a song, perform it, put it on YouTube. It's yours. You don't have to send it specifically to the Copyright Office.
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Too many people in this country do not equate creative talent with work. It's like, oh, big deal. You wrote a song, so what? Well, let's put it this way. Say, let's take a restaurant. Let's take one of our sponsors. Not one of mine, but one of McGraw's. They're on the radio station, Mama Campese's. All right?
Yeah.
So, Mama Campese's, there's been an old family recipe that Mama Campese's great-great-grandmother created back in the 1800s, and she's got some sort of pasta dish, and there's a sauce in the whole thing. And it's been in the family for 100-plus years. Now, somebody comes along, and for whatever reason, somebody's carrying the folder with the recipes in it, and it slips out on the floor. And somebody picks it up and goes, oh, well, I'm going to go over to the other side of the hill, and I'm going to give this recipe to a competing Italian restaurant. And now they whip this thing up, and they're like, hey, wait a minute. That's our recipe. Do you know how badly you would feel? You know how badly Mama Campese would feel that now somebody has taken something that she's owned for 100-plus years, and now they're duplicating it. They didn't have anything to do with the creation, the testing, the nurturing, and the sort of the nurturing of that whole process.
And
it's theft.
And that trade secret, which is a brand of the intellectual property, is why Kentucky Fried Chicken keeps the 11 herbs and spices in some vault somewhere.
KFC.
Oh, sorry.
They haven't used the word fried in 10 years.
But here's
Kentucky
a good point that I just
chicken.
saw on Facebook. One of my Facebook friends, Holly, put this up under SOPA, which is what we're talking about. This is this is the law or whatever that's trying to get you from stealing property. Said under SOPA, you could get 5 years for uploading a Michael Jackson song, 1 year more than the doctor who killed him. Is that not a good point?
Well, as is often the case here, the idea on one side is Hollywood and big entertainment. They want to protect their intellectual property and their copyrights.
That is right.
Over on the other side, you have the wild, wild west, otherwise known as the Internet.
That is right.
Where it's still in its infancy for all intents and purposes.
They cannot keep up
and
with
then in the middle, you have politicians who have been bought off by the big entertainment companies. How am I doing so far? By the big entertainment companies.
I'll see you next week.
Right. And what happens is, as is often the case, a really poorly constructed piece of legislation that they didn't think all the way through, that has all sorts of implications and repercussions, that some dumb politician that just grabbed the money and said, sure, you want me to stop this? Okay, fine. They throw together a sloppy bill, a sloppy piece of legislation, and now here we are today with a bunch of websites shut down, which I have to say is pretty good way of making your voice heard. I mean, it's a pretty good way of them demonstrating their feelings about it.
It's how it got my attention.
Yeah.
What I want to do is run down what it is. Then we'll knock these people silly.
All right.
Because PIPA and SOPA are not Kate Middleton's sisters.
I was about to say,
okay,
it
there's
sounds like royal family members
Yes.
or
PIPA is the
children in private school in Ladue.
PIPA is the Senate version of this bill, and SOPA is the House version of this bill, but it is essentially the same thing. It is, let's go after these pirates. Let's go after these rogue internet websites, these rogue ISP people, all this other, geek squad language that I'm getting very uncomfortable with. Let's go after the people that are stealing these wonderful, beautiful, talented people's copyrights, like the girl that wrote Friday and stuff like that.
God, let's protect Rebecca Black.
We have to protect her and everyone else, and a lot of that is legitimate. But we need Congress. We need the power of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to go after these foreigners. They want to go after foreigners, JC, and that's something that we're all really excited about. But what they're trying to do on the side of the entertainment industry and those that own copyrights, hey, the record industry has been destroyed by this peer-to-peer sharing and all of the rest. On the other end, they're saying, wait a minute, take a look at what it says. What it says is this: PIPA and SOPA say that the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, would have the authority to bring causes of action, lawsuits for injunctions to stop these places, not just the particular person doing it. That was the old one that they passed, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, where they were going after people that were downloading music. Hey, why are you suing the little old lady who just downloaded a couple Michael Jacksons?
You had to pay like for every song or something. It was ridiculous.
Couple hundred. They were really sticking it to these individuals.
They're trying to make examples of people.
Exactly. This is going after the whole site itself, and not just the site. The way that PIPA and SOPA are written, and it came from something they had last year that was really even worse. It could even be those that are, quote, harboring or facilitating that. And that's why Wikipedia and YouTube and Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg, Trish just told me, came out. That's why they are jumping all over this.
Well, what would Wikipedia's exposure be on something like this? What's a practical application to it?
They are now starting to link up photographs. They're now starting to link up audio clips.
So somebody who has taken a professional photograph. For example, if you take a professional photograph and it has on the back of the photograph, like an 8x10, a seal from a professional photographer, and it might even say "do not replicate." If you take that into a drugstore and you try to copy it, they will kick you out and they will say you can't copy this picture because it is copyrighted.
But you put some up all the time that your friend takes.
That's because
Bill Greenblatt?
Because he has given me the authorization to republish those.
But could he,
if he said, this is not for republication, I would not be able to do it.
And with this, now with Wikipedia, there's so many editors. They're all over the world. Wikipedia doesn't just have a building somewhere. They have people working all over the world. They can't police every single person that is an editor for Wikipedia. They may not have the copyright to it. Or someone, like Trish said, can go in and steal away your credit for the pond scum or put something in that they don't have the copyright to, or a copyright owner that doesn't want it put in. And the argument then is, wait a minute, we don't have the resources to police this entire thing, and you, the Department of Justice, are not just going to bring in some foreigners in the Isle of Man like the Pirate Bay or whoever they're targeting to try and shut them down. You're going to bring us in under this harboring rule, and we cannot do business like that.
So what do you do? What would be a way to satisfy the people who have copyrights and feel like they're getting ripped off? And have some middle ground against, on the other side, people who just think that, hey, look, if I got it, I can copy it and I can share it.
Look back to what they already have on the books, which is this Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which punishes the actual people that do this. Give some authority, more authority if they need it, for injunctions. Set up a way for the courts to look at these cases and maybe shut them down if they're really being egregious.
But I don't even know what I can and can't do. I mean, the average person doesn't know they're committing a crime.
That's exactly what they want.
And that is the real argument here. That they may have the authority. You know, we've talked about Congress having the authority to do something. We've also talked about First Amendment protections. But when Congress writes a law, they always look and say, is the language too vague for us to understand? Is it too overbroad that it restricts too much speech? And these people on the internet, these companies, they are terrified. It's called the chilling effect, that this law, although it sounds like a good idea, is written so poorly that they're not going to understand it, and you're going to get less information.
Well, it's like Trish said. It's like you end up in a situation where somebody who copies something ends up with more jail time than the doctor who killed Michael Jackson. And again, we know what's going on in China, for example. You have this situation where you got the internet, but you get what they want you to have from the internet. And it's like AOL. No, just kidding. That's it. Good afternoon, everybody.
And if North Korea and Iran and Cuba and other places like that we don't like legitimately and for a good reason, if they do this kind of stuff to our people, imagine how people in other parts of the world feel about when our Department of Justice decides to do it to them. And guess what? It's not just about following the money, which is exactly what you said. And when I'm sure you come back from break, boy, I got some really good stuff about following the money.
We're just going to wrap up on this whole thing with regard to your Wikipedia being shut down, and then we're going to go off to the cruise industry. So just finish that thought now on where you wanted to go.
Yeah, following the money is what you brought this up at first, and it's an excellent point. Patrick Leahy is the senator that is the sponsor of this PIPA legislation. He's the one that came up with the precursor to it called COECA. It's basically the same stuff. He's from Vermont. 9 of his top 20 donors are from Hollywood. If you look at his donor list.
Do what I say or I'll cut off the maple syrup.
That's right.
Who's donating to him in Vermont?
It's sort of like John Kerry. Vote for me or my wife. There'll be no ketchup.
Here's the list. Time Warner, Disney, Vivendi, which owns Universal, an intellectual property company, Comcast, that owns 51% now of NBC. Another movie company.
Or Cable Town with a K.
A movie theater company. Sony, Warner Music, GE. They still. The list goes on and on.
You see what's going on.
Follow the money. Now, he does get money from Microsoft, which is interesting. They're in Silicon Valley.
Obviously not enough from Microsoft.
I don't understand why they're donating to him in Vermont still.
Because he's the guy that's in charge of this kind of legislation.
He's on the subcommittee.
Guess what? Bill Gates, he didn't make money giving stuff away for free. He's the king of intellectual property. He's the one that didn't write all of that basic stuff.
And the king of taste is Lion's Choice. Go ahead.
Right. And the king of pain is a song from the Police. So this is who's running this ship. Now, in the House, the main opponent of it is a guy named Darrell Issa.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Frequent guest on Bill Maher in real time. Yeah.
Yes, and Darrell Issa's located in California. He's not in Silicon Valley. In fact, he's closer to Hollywood than he is Silicon Valley. He's just south of Orange County. Guess how many donors he has from the entertainment industry? 0. And he is the main opponent of the SOPA that's in the House. So you have basically Darrell Issa on one side in the House trying to kill the legislation and help California, because we know that the big Silicon Valley industry is the only industry California has that's not the entertainment industry. And then you have the big Hollywood guy.
How interesting.
In Vermont.
The guy from Vermont has got all the money from the Hollywood guys.
And guess who is running the main show for trying to get this passed, who's going to his old colleagues and saying, you need to pass this.
This ought to be good.
Senator Chris Dodd from Connecticut, who is no longer a U.S. Senator, thanks for the banking stuff and ruining the housing market. He is now the president of the Motion Picture Association.
And you remember
of
Chris
America.
Dodd, at one point there was a controversy because they were going to, they always have these public works things like Mel Price, the Memorial Dam, and the Eagleton building and all that. They were going to build a dam in Connecticut, and then they realized we can't call this thing Dodd Dam. So anyhow, it's a long way to go for nothing. So as usual, you follow the money, you see what's going on here. It has more to do with politics than it has to do with, oh gosh, I don't know, what the United States of American citizens, what's best for them. This is a bunch of politicians going, there's a little hole in my pocket here that if you could just put something in there, I'd feel a lot better balanced today.
Yes, and that is the problem. And one day when we have more time, we will talk about the horrible case that allowed all of this to happen.
All right.